Welcome back, my beautiful super soul sisters. And today I wouldn't mind talking to you about Hard Knock City. How do you recover from taking knock after knock after knock in your business? And it gets to a point quite often when I talk to some folks, you kind of get to a point where you think, bloody hell, I just can't keep going. This is just insane, isn't it? Like, and you get to a point where quite often you give up, right? Okay. Now, I don't know if you've ever been there, but Lord, I have, like talk about knock hard city. I mean, like, honestly, I don't think there's anyone who's had just plain sailing. And I think that's one of the fallacies that we seem to have. Like there's this misconception almost, or at least certainly it was from my side with business. Like there's some people who made it just look so easy. Like how do you do that? How do you just make it so easy and cruise through life? And they seem to be the right person in the right place at the right time. And they just had all the money, and they just had all the backing and the support that they needed. There was a new release, and therefore it made it easier for them to actually take flight. Yes, but by the same token, it's like Tony Robbins often says, doesn't he, where it's like, luck is really when opportunity arises with preparedness. So the more prepared you are, the more likely you're going to be available for when an opportunity comes along. If you're not prepared in the first place, then you're already on the back foot and you're going to luck out. So it's how prepared are you? But you can be so prepared and still it doesn't work. And look, I've had multiple what we would call failures, and initially I got to tell you, it was tough, and the most unexpected things have happened. So I'm going to share some of my hard knocks with you, just so that you get that it's not easy for, there's other people who have taken the hit and they still manage to keep going. So, it may sound sort of down and out, what I'm going to share with you, but I want to share it not because I want the sympathy and the, oh my God, that was terrible, etc., etc. It's not about that. It's about how do you pick yourself up from that when something like totally blindsides you. You didn't see it coming, or you thought that this, big venture was going to just take flight and then it didn't. What do you do next? Because quite often I find that it leaves people in this vacuum and they go into collapse. They put too much into something and then they go, well, I've been burnt now, once bitten, twice shy. I'm not going there again. And the thing is, then you live in a place of life happening to you again. Like you become so resigned. And I think being resigned is probably one of the worst places for people to be, because, I remember this one coach and I thought, wow, that's so sad. One of the reasons that a lot of businesses fail is because they actually lose hope. And I just thought, God, that's the most awful thing, It's like you just thought it was just going to be this be all and end all. So, but does it mean that people who've had knocks, what have they done? Because they've had knocks and they've come right. What's the lesson in that? How can you do things differently is really what it comes down to. So I'm going to give you some of my hard knocks, and I'd love for you to share some of your hard knock cities that you've had, in your business, where it's like, oh man, this happened to me. And not for it to be a whinge session, but rather to give people honestly hope. I know it sounds really odd that if you're having a hard time, you're not the only one. And there is honestly reprieve in that. And it's also reprieve in finding out from others how they got through, so you can also get through as well. Because, I don't have all the answers. I think, like I've said to you before, anybody who says they've got all the answers, run for the hills, because they don't. You know, there are so many things that you just never would have anticipated that just come out of the blue, and you've got to shapeshift. You've got to be able to be light on your feet. You've got to be able to adapt to the situation and find a way through sometimes, because you don't have all the answers. But that's why it's so important. Like, I'm so big on the emotional resilience stuff, and I know that there's, you know, a lot of people are watching, but I'm hoping that you're actually embracing and actually doing those exercises, because it's things like the ERT, the Emotional Resilience Toolkit, that will get you through. That's the stuff that helped me get me through when, you know, these things happen and you're just like, whoa, what the heck, you know? What was that? You know, comes up from behind and claps you on the back of your head, you know? You're just like, what was that? Oh my goodness. So, like, so I've had a few, okay? Like, there was one where I had this adventure, and I put some mega time into this. I had sold my design web studio, and I had approached an incubator, ironically, backed by the government, would you believe, and approached them. Now, one would think, wouldn't you, that because it's an incubator backed by the government, that you can, in fact, rely on them and that they're trustworthy. Now, in my not so infinite wisdom, I did not sign a confidentiality agreement with them. And the guy who was running it turned out to be a bit of a dodgy biscuit. And I don't know how he managed to land up heading up this incubator. But effectively, I had this concept that I wanted to try and get funding for, some backing for. And I pitched it to them. And he said, fantastic idea. I think it's really great. We're behind you. He was quite an authoritarian kind of guy. He was quite aggressive, if I'm honest. And I found it really quite challenging working with him because, you know, he was quite brutal. It wasn't that supportive way of you know, working with people. He was, if you've been following my videos, you know, he didn't use softeners. He used only hardener language. He was short and curt and to the point and very direct. It was his way or the highway. And he was really quite angry. So it was quite an interesting combination, if I'm honest, if I was working with. But anyway, we were working together, putting together this whole business plan that you then go and pitch to the angel network in order to get funding. So I went along and I started doing all these exercises, and man, it was hard work. Not the exercises, but working with him was quite challenging. But I stuck with it because I thought, well, you know, the vision's bigger than the person. So get over it. And, you know, you're a coach, so you can handle it. And I did, you know. But then for a while, he went quiet. And I thought, well, that's very strange. You know, I'm supposed to be pitching to the angels, you know, like in 3 months. And I haven't heard anything. And I kept reaching out. And it must have been probably about a month before we were supposed to, you know, go in. I sent through a message again, and I phoned, I left messages, and I wasn't getting any response. And I thought, that's really hinky. I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, long story short, what happened was, in the end, he turned around about a week before I was supposed to go in and see the angels, and he said, we've decided we're not going to run with this project. And that was it. Now, I didn't get any other, and I was like, what just happened? You know, I thought I was going to get this backing. Or was tickety-boo. There was no, he said he was, you know, we'd made progress. Anyway, long story short, I could not believe my eyes, but he used to work for the telecommunications, you know, like Vodafone, the equivalent of, here in New Zealand. It wasn't Vodafone, but it was the equivalent of. And Yellow Pages was the other one. And my concept that I had pitched to him, someone said, oh, he used to work here. And I can't believe it, Vix. Have a look at this. It was my exact concept that I had been pitching. So basically he had, I don't know if he was involved in it, but the biggest players that I was, but now the reason, there was connections there was that he used to work for Yellow Pages. He used to be involved. So he must have, we're assuming, had got this concept done in-house by what would have been my competitor, would have been my partner, landed up now being my biggest competitor, and I didn't get the funding, and they took off with my idea. And you go, oh wow. So an expensive lesson, I would say, if anybody ever goes out there and does anything, please do sign a confidentiality. That was one. I've had a few. One I felt so embarrassed about. This was about a partnership deal where I did online accommodation, like booking.com, where this is back in the day. This was before booking.com, and I was trying to get this concept off the ground. Two things happened with that project actually that were hard knock cities. One was that I was in the throes of, I did all the accommodation sites, so it was all real-time booking online. And then I had this other partner with me who was teaming up with me for activities. And so the idea was that we would work together so that if you booked your accommodation, you could then go through and book your activity as well. So I was like, sweet, awesome man, really authentic, great morals and ethics. Anyway, there was another player in town who perhaps we could say was not quite on the same values plane as we were. And in my infinite wisdom and naivety, I went and had a conversation with my then business partner, joint venture partner, and I said, look, it seems a bit silly that there's two activity providers in this town. Why do we, wouldn't it be more sensible to try and merge those forces? So then you've pretty much got monopoly. And my VC, said yes. JV said, yeah, I think that's a great idea. Let's do it. But because I knew the contact, I thought, it would probably best if I went, and we both agreed on that. So I went and had this conversation with this outfit. Oh my goodness, I'll never forget it. It was just quite incredible. Jaw-dropping. So what happened is we're sitting having this conversation. It was all ticky-boo. Yes, I'm really keen. Let's do it. He said, well, what sort of things have you got coming up? So I shared some of the stuff that I had been allowed to share. I'd been, from the activity provider that I was partnered with. And I did share some of the stuff with this guy, because he said, well, I want to sort of, work in with how we would fit in with that and what we can do to support that. So it sounded great. Anyway, next thing, he sends out a letter to all the activity providers within this town, and he says, I am rolling out, and he quite literally listed everything that was going to be done by my JV, my joint venture partner. And I was absolutely mortified. I was like, okay, but he had made it clear that it was his company that was doing it. And then we had a meeting, because I thought, oh, well, maybe that's a good thing. Let me just go and have a chat. Had a chat, and no jokes, sitting in the meeting, he said, right, here's what's going to happen. We're not going to join up with your activity one. You're going to work with me now. You're not going to work with those others. And you can give me your company, like my company that I'd been building up for my activity thing. You can give me your company, and you can work for me on commission for 10%. commission only. And I was like, the guy's on drugs. It's like, what the heck? So it was such a surprise, and I was so like, you've so got to be so careful, I've got a big heart. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and fortunately my joint venture guy was just, we were both rolling our eyes going, what the heck? And of course nothing happened, which is a shame, because if they had, then they probably, we would have been in a much stronger position as a result. And then so look, I've got others that I can tell you for sure. Actually, there's a few but this is what I'm trying. I don't want to go on and on and on about it, but it's like, what I'm trying to say to you is that Oh yeah, it was with the same project actually. A relative put me in touch with a big timeshare company for my booking business, for rooms and accommodations. And it's the effective, if anyone knows SiteMinder is where an accommodation booking provider can put in one room and it can split to several different directories. Well, before SiteMinder came on board, I had that concept and I was looking for funding to get that off the ground. Anyway, so I was pitching for that, and nobody could see the actual value. But there was an outfit that I had been introduced to by a relative, this time huge timeshare company, huge, massive, absolutely massive. And man, if we had got in with them, it would have been like, we would have potentially been the equivalent of SiteMinder, or the, on a par or a core competitor at least, because they had hundreds of millions in the bank that they could, put towards this. Anyway, because it was through a relative, I trusted, and again, didn't sign an NDA. I mean, it's like the universe is going, what's wrong with you, Vicky? Did you not learn, It's just like, well, because it was a relative, I made an exception, you see, and the guy was just so lovely. So anyway, he ended up moving out, the owner of that big timeshare sold the timeshare business and had, I think it was like 200 million capital, and basically took the idea and ran with it. And how they rolled it out didn't work. And I have to say, karma's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because they pretty much blew the whole lot and it didn't take off. It was the how they did it that was quite an aggressive approach that didn't work for me. It's not how I would have done it. But yet you look at, if they had done it right, the SiteMinder, which is now worldwide and is pretty much the number one dominant player, right? So, go figure, hey? So in hindsight, we look at these things, and that one, DIY shopping cart and website business that my idea got, run with that incubator. Of course, now I'm gun shy of incubators, because it's just like, oh my gosh, that's supposed to be an approved agency. So now and the thing is, here you can't get in with the angels unless you go through them, and there's like, well, I'm just never going to go back there. So when I look for funding and everything, it's going to have to be crowdfunding. It's going to have to be you guys who help me get off the ground, if I ever do anything like that. I mean, I've got an idea, but honestly, I don't think I could trust them anymore because of what's happened. But did that stop me? No, and I do look at things now. I look back in retrospect, and my husband and I were talking about this the other day, and he said, Vix, it's amazing because you've always been ahead of the curve, like that, that whole thing with the SiteMinder concept. Look how big SiteMinder is. It is, I think it's a multi-billion-dollar industry now. WordPress was the equivalent of what I was doing, but here in New Zealand, but where it was linked into a community where people could, mothers could work from home, connected in a community environment, selling products from their houses, like say you wanted to sell your jam or your, whatever, make cards or whatever it is. And that was the whole idea, is that you had this, cost effective, build your own website that links into a community. Well, look what happened with the pandemic. There was such an emphasis suddenly from people having to work from home. And it was just like, oh man, if only, hey? If only that, someone could have seen the light with me and had the faith in me back then that we would have been cruising, especially in the pandemic, because everybody was locked at home going, I have to work from home. How am I going to do this? I don't have a choice. I can't go to work, and so many people losing their jobs, they needed sideline income. So, you just go, wow, but if people can't see the value of your proposition, and unfortunately, dare I say, there was a lot here. Maybe I'm making an excuse, but there is, I don't know if it's so much now, but certainly when I was getting involved, that there's a lot of funding for farming, because it's a big farming country. It's all, cows and sheep, a lot of sheep, as you know, and we're known for our lambs. So there was a lot of money being invested in those kind of non-tech kind of environments rather than tech environments, and there just was no opportunity and no way to get into that. So did it knock me? Yeah, absolutely. I would be absolutely lying to you if I didn't. I mean, one absolutely floored me. I was just like, holy crap, man, but you have to rain check, you have to step back, you've got to go, what's the learnings? And you know what, I look back now, and I'm a firm believer of life is working for you, not against you. And even though you can't see the light in it at the time, there is a reason. And I do have that faith. I didn't back then, if I'm honest. I was like feeling rather sorry for myself, if I'm brutally honest. It's like, oh my gosh, that's like, there were about 4 big massive projects that all of them, I got somewhere along the line just went awry, and you go, there has to be a reason for that not happening. And I look now back on that and I go, do you know what? If I had been absorbed in, if I'd had got backing like for that web business concept that I had with that incubator and the equivalent of like the SiteMinder, if I had done that, I would have been working like 60-hour weeks. I would have been absolutely slogging my guts out. And here's the thing, my priority, dare I say, are my children. My children come first, my family come first, and then business. And it used to be the other way around before I had kids. Like, it was like go, 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 go. And my business was my family. And then one day I realized, well, actually they're not. And at the end of the day, I remember Tony Robbins telling us a story about how this one man who was extremely ambitious, made lots of money, that he was coaching, and he was awful to his wife. I wasn't awful. Oh, I'd like to think I wasn't awful to my husband, but he really wasn't. His focus was all on the material, effectively. He was lost in the ego, and he got cancer. And at the end of the day, who was standing next to him by his bedside? His co-workers, his workers that worked for him? No, none, nothing. And apparently this guy had an awakening because it was his wife and his kids. His wife and his kids were there. And the reality is that I'm not that driven by ego, certainly not anymore. I might have been at one stage in my life, especially when I was in the UK, because, that's how I'd been conditioned. That's how we get, brought up. Well, it certainly was in Zimbabwe and South Africa. There's still a huge emphasis on your value your value, dare I say, is equated to your title. So the more you earn, the more valuable you are perceived to be. And I think that's a misconception right there, that needs to go out the window, because nothing could be further from the truth. I'd much rather have a genuine, humble, down-to-earth person in my life that I'm partnered with in a business environment than someone who is full of ego and a pocket full of cash and who's a complete a-hole. You can have that person. I am so not interested. So it's getting that concept. So now, what do? Like, you've got the situation now where you've had a hard knock. And honestly, I would not have had time. I look back now and I go, thank you. Thank you for saving me from having to do that, and I would have missed all those years with my kids, and you can't get it back, eh? Once it's gone, it's gone. And I was like, no way. I would have been absolutely friggin' miserable if that had happened. Why have kids if you can't have time with them? Why have family if you can't have time with them? I wouldn't have had time for my friends. It would have been insane. It would have just been work. And then I also see the blessing in that. Thank God I didn't end up having to be partnered with those kind of people. Can you imagine? I mean, if that's how they operate on a values level, we would never have made it. We would have parted ways for sure. So we can't see why these things happen, but it helped me grow as a person. And then now as a coach, I'm able to help people handle it better, right? And, you know, learn. Sign NDAs was my lesson. I mean, it was just like, flipping heck, girl, you know. I had to get 2 serious hard knocks for that to happen. I was like, oh my gosh, I should have known the second after the first one. But, you know, you don't get it the first time, the universe will deliver for a second time. So tell us some of your hard knocks, because I think it gives people hope that they're not the only ones. You know, I did feel when that was happening to me that it's like, this has only happened to me. It's just really bad luck, yada, yada, yada. You know, and by the same token, it's like, well, not really. Maybe I chose this lesson. Maybe, you know. There is that philosophy around that as well. So I think it would be really great if you would be open to sharing. If it's too personal, obviously don't do it. But just have faith that it's for a better reason, that something better is there for you out there, and not to lose hope. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that for today, and namaste. Have a great day. Your shoes, your path, your way. Namaste.